Hello and welcome to colleagues here in Sprint Review for 19.10.01. This will cover the work undertaken between the 1st of October to the 14th of October. Our sprint goal for this sprint has been to deliver a series of minor updates to assist with client requirements based on user feedback. Looking at the high-level items and to explain further, in this sprint we've been able to add the ability to view and edit an invoice record in back office. We've updated the candidates, company, contact and requirement selection screens with the ability to search by teams. We've updated the requirement search so that the add option uses a partial view. We now include a last login date field against all user records. We've introduced the reports maintenance area to admin, which dictates which user groups can view which reports. We've added an active date option to the report targets table for reporting purposes. When making an offer, it will now pull across the rates or salary held against the candidate details into the offer form. As a minor update, we'll now place the cursor in the first field when adding a record. We've added the option to copy social media links and documents when running the markers lever feature. And we'll now be allowing for a default search entity type setting. We'll now go for a brief demonstration on the key features from this sprint. Okay, so the first point to cover is the update that's been made to the candidates, company, contact and requirement selection screens, and that's in relation to the ability to now search by team. So previously you could search by user, and the user drop-down list would contain essentially all of the instances of the user within any kind of team or sub-team. As part of that list, that's how we were sort of setting up. But also as what was also a complexity or an issue for users was that you couldn't actually just select a single team and be able to have it search for all of the users associated within that team. And that's what you can now do as part of this update. When I'm referring to teams, it's all of the teams that have been set up within, you've got admin here in teams, and you've got obviously an ability to set up a team structure within here. How this works is that you will have the option obviously of selecting a team, and you obviously will have the option of selecting any user, but on the basis of your selection it'll also update the other field as well. So if you were to select, say, this office, and then when you select a user, you'll see that this is the user list is updated, and these are the users associated with this team. So you could do a search based on just this team, and it would search looking to find all of the instances of those users being an owner of that record, or you could specifically select a user, obviously, and it will be just for that user, just within that team. A reverse to that is if you selected a user, and then what happens is the team list would update. So based on your selection of the user, the team list will update to only show teams that user is associated to. It's just so it avoids the scenario obviously searching for a user within a team that obviously isn't associated to that team. So you get that relationship as well. So if you left that as view all and you ran this search, then it would obviously search for all instances of this user, regardless of the kind of parent team they may be associated to being present within the ownership of the record. And this is the same for candidates, company, contact, and requirements. And this will essentially work just with your team structure automatically following the update. Just a couple of points to go through with regards to the search. First point to note is that there is now a default search entity type that you're allowed to set. So that's both from a global setting and also from a user setting. So within your user settings under the section of search options, you'll see here that you've got a default search entity. So the default is normally always candidate. When you hit search, it goes to the candidate default search type, but you can, if you want to, set that to be any other of the entity type searches, and then what that will do is ensure when you're clicking on the search, it will go to the company search by default, say, in that scenario. The other element that's been updated in relation to the search is in relation to the requirement, and that's this add option that's associated to the requirement. If you wanted to add a requirement to this search result. Before, when you hit add there, it would take you to the requirement selection screen, and it's a bit of a convoluted way of taking you off and then taking you back. Now when you hit add, it loads the partial view, and by default it'll also load up any live requirements that you have open at that time. You can then select a requirement, and it obviously adds it to the search results. So it just keeps you on the page, keeps you present where you need to be. So that's another update that we made there. The next few points to cover are in relation to the admin area. The first point to cover is just in relation to users. So within the users area, what we've added now is a last logged in date against the user record. So if, for example, we'll pick on this user here, if you go to a user record, what you'll be able to see is the last logged in date and time of that user. So that's just a process that's been added to the login process. When the user logs in, it tracks it now in an activity table, the date and time they logged in, just so you have a track record of that, and obviously that will come into play with reporting further down the line. With regards to the reports maintenance, that's another area that's been added. So within the reports section here, you've got reports maintenance now, and this section dictates which reports are basically available to certain user groups. So as this user group being the prime example, you'll see that you've obviously got available reports on the left hand side, and you've got selected reports on the right hand side. And based on what has been selected and added across, and what is obviously available here and been removed, will dictate which reports are obviously accessible from within the reports listing here. So if I just put that back in, and then basically within the reports listing, obviously you can see the reports within here that are available against this user group. So that's an update we made there in relation to user group access to different reports. The last point in relation to this area is on reports targets, and that's that we've added in a reports active date against report targets. So this is an area that's somewhat underutilized currently, but will grow over time as we build it into the different reports and the different dashboards. But essentially, this is the idea of setting specific targets against different users in the system to achieve certain targets. What we've got here now is an active date, which would be a trigger as to when that target should come into effect. So that option is there now, and we've obviously added some users, a user filter in here and an activity filter as well, so that you can obviously manage the report targets in this section. But as I say, somewhat underutilized currently, but we've added that in there because we've got an implementation in play where that report target active date is required. So that's just an update we made there. Another element to cover is in relation to the offer creation process and the candidate details associated with it. So within a requirements on the candidates tab, obviously on selection of a candidate, you have the ability to view candidate details. So there's that you can store a charge rate, a pay rate, a salary associated with this candidate in relation to this requirement. So in the instance of a contract, the charge rate and pay rate, what happens now is when you're making the offer, the charge rate and pay rate that you've assigned against the candidate will be pulled through into the offer form, and the margin will be automatically calculated on the basis of those values. So that's just a time saver essentially associated with that. If it were a permanent placement, the salary would be pulled through, and then you would add the fee there associated so that you could calculate your margin. But that's just a time saver update that we've made there in relation to the candidate details and the offer creation process. The last point to cover is just in relation to the markers lever workflow that's available from the contact record. So off the view more, you've got markers lever. If a contact was moving to another company, which you had on the system, and you wanted to move this contact to that company, what you have now are options, additional options to copy social media links and any documents that you've got associated to the contact. So just as part of running this workflow, if these options were ticked, it would copy over any associated social media and obviously any documentation that you've got associated with this contact that will be copied over to the new contact created against the other company. And that's an update we've made there. As always, if you have any queries or feedback, please get in touch. I'll be keen to hear from you. Also, for those using Colleague 7, feel free to submit your enhancement requests via the support team or directly to me using the above email address. The next video will be the sprint plan for 19.10.02, and as always, that will contain a high-level overview on the items we intend to work on during that sprint. Thanks for watching.